Hello and welcome back. This is the final video for my Calodan Magistrate challenge series, and in this video we will discuss the final logic connections for the boss fight and for freeing our two prisoners from the locking gate cages behind Ahsoka, which completes the challenge. We will also discuss the reset connections that allow the player to repeat the challenge without reloading the toy box. Once again, my name is Rich, and we'll get started with our boss fight spawner. Okay, so we'll take a look at the properties again for our boss fight spawner, set to Darth Maul. So we're going to make a new logic connection when Maul is defeated, and we're going to select Darth Maul from our actors drawer, and we're going to come over to our replayer, and in our replayer we will select playback. This will allow the two keys to drop into place for the player to unlock the locking gate cages to free our two prisoners. We'll also look at the properties here for our replayer and set our playback interval to 0. Our counter over here is what records when the two locking gate cages have been unlocked. It's set to a target count of 2, and the visible display I've decided to use off once again. So now we can come over to each of our locking gate cages, and we're going to do a new logic connection. When it is opened, we'll come back to our counter, and we're going to increment by 1. And then to our second locking gate cage, new logic connection when it is opened, back to the counter, and we will once again increment by 1. This will complete the game, indicating that the player has won the challenge. So new logic connection when the target is reached. We'll come all the way back over to our challenge maker, and we'll make our connection here for completing the game. So complete the game, and the player or players have won the challenge. Alright, we'll look at the properties for our locking gate cages. I'd already set it to on to remove the key when used. It defaults to off, so you want to select on to make the key disappear, because otherwise there's no way to reset the key when you start the challenge or restart the challenge. Same thing over here for the second locking gate cage. Remove key when used will be switched to on. That's why we'll use our replayer to drop in 2 keys, one for each locking gate cage, and then each key will be removed upon opening the each cage. So we'll come over, we'll step on our replayer. I'm going to push playback, which for me is the A button on my Xbox One controller. And we'll open up our inventory, go to gameplay toys, and select the gate wall key. And we'll place 1 key next to each of the locking gate cages in front of them. So now when Maul is defeated, it'll send a playback signal to our replayer, dropping the 2 keys in so that the player can finish the game. Come back, we'll select A again to stop playback, and then press Y on my Xbox One to clear. If you want, you can set up a couple of buttons, one button for playback and another button to reset the replayer to test the logic to make sure that the replayer works correctly. I didn't demonstrate this here, but it's something you can do just to make sure the replayer is working, and then you can delete your buttons back out. Alright, we're going to grab our counter here. This is the counter that controls the end game and completes the game. So we're going to come over next to our text displayers here, and once again we want to make sure we use text displayer number 2, not the first one. And we're going to do a new logic connection when the target is reached. Come to our text displayer number 2, and we're going to scroll all the way down to the missions drawer. And our two prisoners are going to thank us for freeing them from their prison cells. So used. We are indebted to you. I like that particular message. I was going to bring our counter over here to our boombox because now the challenge is complete. We're going to once again turn off the music. So when target is reached, come over to our boombox and we'll select off. Pause in a moment here to look at my notes to see what's next. That's why there's the little delay here. But we're going to come back and we're going to grab our counter here. I'm going to move it back into the town. Alright, there we go. Alright, that ends the game and completes the challenge. So this particular logic gate is connected to Challenge Maker, and it controls the logic when the game is ended by the player or completed by winning the challenge. So we're going to make all of our resets necessary so that the player can replay the challenge without reloading the toy box. So the first thing on new logic connection on output, we'll come over to our trigger area that starts the challenge, and we're going to activate that again. That'll allow the player to restart the challenge. Once again, new logic connection on output. We're going to turn off the boombox. We're doing this in case the player has elected to terminate the challenge in the middle of the challenge. So that will turn off the music and have it reset if the challenge is restarted. Once again, new logic connection on output. Come over to our effects generator and we'll say stop looping effects, and this will stop the smoke from being generated in both the forest and inside the town. Again, new logic connection on output. Come over to our blue team activator and we're going to remove all players or clear all players from teams. So if the challenge has been completed or ended, this at least allows the players, if you're playing multiplayer, if you want to run around the forest, the town, anywhere in the toy box and do player versus player, it allows you to do that. So once again, new logic connection on output. We're going to come over to our forest phase to the first enemy wave, and we're going to defeat that wave. We'll worry about the other wave later on. Once again, new logic connection on output. We're going to come over to our cutscene logic row. And we're going to go to our enemy wave generator for that, and we're going to defeat that wave. Once again, new logic connection on output. We'll come over to our final row of logic here for our town phase, and we're going to defeat the first enemy wave there as well. Once again, we'll get back to the additional enemy waves a little bit later on. So new logic connection on output. We also want to come all the way back over to our boss fight spawner and turn that off, or make sure that it's off. Alright, back to our logic gate for game ended or game completed. And we're going to go back to new logic connection again. Just looking at my notes one more time. There we go. New logic connection on output. We're going to come over to our first trigger area in front of the main gate that controls the text displayers, and we're going to deactivate it. We'll also do a new logic connection on output. We'll come to the trigger area after I reconnect my controller. Come over to the second trigger area here that opens and closes the gate, and we're going to activate that. Turn it back on. Alright, let's grab this logic gate and we'll move it over here. And I'm going to give you a little tutorial here on what not to do. Good examples of that. I intended to do this. If you believe that, I have some swampland to sell you. So do not place it on top of your locator. Put it beside your locator. Now you can point to it a lot better. And we're going to fumble around with this as well, trying to target this first trigger area. And what I'm grabbing is the door. I don't want to grab the door. So I'm going to fumble around for a little bit. I'm going to try it a second time because I didn't learn my lesson the first time. And we're still going to fumble around some here. So once again, purposefully showing everybody what not to do. Do yourselves a favor. Before you start this connection, just grab that trigger area and pull it out to the side so you can make a clean connection to it. I think I finally grabbed it. There we go. Alright. So that's the trigger area that once again is connected to our text displayers to tell the players that they can't enter the magistrate residence until they defeat all the enemy waves. So on output, we're going to deactivate this trigger area. And now here, new logic connection. On output, we will activate the trigger area that allows the front door to open and close. We are also going to do new logic connection on output. We are going to deactivate both of the trigger areas connected to the text displayer that allow our prisoners to ask us for help. So we're going to deactivate both of those. And we'll do the same here for the second. And those are both turned off now. Now we can move this trigger area back into place. Alright, we'll move our logic gate back in place. Once again, this is the game ended and game completed logic gate. All my little delays here are me checking my notes, and when I clicked out of it, brought me right back into town in front of the magistrate residence. So we're going to get to it here. So new logic connection on output. We're going to start our first time delayer. And new logic connection, when this delay is complete, it'll start our second time delayer. The properties of this is set to 2 seconds. And the properties of the second one, I was in my head adding 2 plus 2 is 4. You don't need 4. 2 seconds is plenty. You can use 2-second delay on each of these time delayers. So new logic connection, when this delay is completed, we're going to defeat the second wave for our for our forest phase of the game. We're also going to use this new logic connection delay completed off our first time delayer. And we are going to also defeat the second wave for our town phase. Now we'll come to our final time delayer. And new logic connection. We're going to defeat both waves for the third and fourth waves of Lang and the 4 droids. The reason I'm using the time delayers is I discovered that if I ended the challenge in the first wave of any phase of the game, that sometimes the next enemy wave would be generated by that. So I'm using the time delayers to defeat those waves because an enemy wave being defeated generates the next wave. So I'm using the time delayers to counteract that logic. So that logic gate and those two time delayers are now hooked up to defeat all of the enemy waves if the player decides to end the game early. So this trigger area is what the player enters to start the challenge. This logic gate is connected to our challenge maker and controls everything that happens when the invites are accepted. The second one for when the challenge is started, and this third one for when the challenge is ended or completed. This first row of logic controls our enemy waves, our counter, and our radar marker for the forest phase of the game, the first phase. The second row controls our cutscene, and the third row controls the town phase, which is 4 enemy waves. And then we have our repeater and time delayer up here, and our speaker for ringing the bell, which occurs at the beginning of the forest phase and at the beginning of the town phase. And all of that leads us to our final and third phase of the game, the boss fight phase, as well as freeing our 2 enemies, controlled by the replayer, and the counter to record when both locking gate cages have been opened. Alright, that's all of our connections. The challenge is complete. So with our hollow wall, we have this convenient space to hide all of our logic. I'm not going to move all of the logic in. I'm just demonstrating here a few of these pieces, how you can line them up and keep them organized. Our level starter. Our blue team activator for multiplayer. The 2 friend generators fit in there nicely, as well as all of our other logic, and you'll have to line it lengthwise. That's what I'm showing here, is just line them up going along the wall inside. You can also pull all of these logic pieces, creativity toys, down inside of the wall as well to hide them. Unfortunately, the challenge maker doesn't fit inside the wall. It's too wide. So what I did is I just, at that position, I just pulled it straight down underneath the terrain. And then to keep myself organized, these 3 logic gates, as well as the 2 time delayers, I moved all of them down under the terrain to sit next to the challenge maker, just to keep everything nicely organized and bundled together. Now for your replayer and your counter for the locking gate cages, I hid mine behind the wall. I moved them all the way to the front and hid them in the gap in the wall. You can also, if you want, leave them in this location where they may be, where they're more useful to you. You can also just pull them underground here. So kind of up to you as to how you want to hide these 2 logic pieces. Okay, so that completes our challenge. That's the final connections for our boss fight, for freeing our 2 prisoners, for completing and ending the game, as well as all the resets necessary so that you can just play the challenge over and over again without exiting and reloading the challenge. We'll have one more thing to discuss. I have a short video clip and we'll get to that next. In my video that discussed the design considerations for the magistrate's residence and the industrial complex in the background, I had mentioned that I wasn't entirely satisfied with the antenna build for the top of the magistrate's residence. And I think I've come up with a better solution, something that looks a lot better. So we're going to start with our pillar block from the basic blocks drawer, and that's going to stay in place. And then I had used this Hoth warning beacon from Building Sets Group 5. Just, it looks silly, it looks out of place, and I wasn't creative enough to come up with a better solution, but I think I've done that. So we're going to get rid of this warning beacon. We're going to delete it out. There it goes. And then I've taken the liberty of placing the other two pieces that we're going to replace it with here. And we're going to bring up this basic blocks triangle block, the pyramid shape, and we're going to place it right on top of the pillar block. And then we're going to style it. So we'll go to our style drawer and to the end door hanger wall. That will match the pillar block below. And then we can come over and grab our pipe climb from the platforming toys drawer. And I use the mid-size or medium-size pipe climb. I'll place that right on top to complete our antenna. And once again, we'll go into Style, to our color palette, and change it to gray. Notice the tall tower in the background to the back left corner. There's two other ones, one to the right and one to the forward left corner of the magistrate's residence. I've used those same three pieces to create antennas on top of those three towers, which matches the episode, Chapter 13, The Jedi. If you watch the episode, you'll notice that those tall towers have very similar looking antennas on top of them. So I actually repeated that 3 times for those 3 tall towers. Oh, strike 1 and strike 2. This is me just demonstrating, I guess, a phrase that white men can't jump also applies to video games. Thank goodness I made it on the 3rd attempt. So just showing here a little bit of up-close view of it, as well as if you're just exploring around the toy box, jumping around, playing around, how you can climb up and have a little bit of fun with it.
I'm ready for anything. Droids, Sith, angry beasts, whatever.
And Ahsoka is definitely ready to take on this challenge as well. So this concludes my Calodan Magistrate challenge tutorials. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. And once again, thanks for watching and be well.